Welcome to Negocios with BISILA BOKOKO, Business with BISILA BOKOKO. You could say it in English, you could say it in Spanish, it doesn't matter. And today we're going to speak about something that I'm super passionate about it, which is education, with Brody, who has an amazing career in education, different aspects of education that I think that we definitely should hear from. And welcome.
Thank you for having me. Really happy to be here and talk about a very important topic, for sure.
Absolutely. So how did you become interested in education?
Yeah. So I always loved school. And I think sometimes we forget the impact school has for every child.
Mm-hmm.
School is a place where you have structure. It could be the place where you're getting maybe your one real meal for many people around this country and around the world. School is a safe haven where you can focus on yourself, where there's people advocating for you. It might be the first place where someone says, wow, you're really good at that, and you find your strengths. So schools should be the crux of every person's education, is the crux of it all. This is how we incubate our youth, who then become adults. So
Absolutely.
I've always been passionate about education and a lover of school, and school was a safe haven for me as well.
Wow. And you jump into entrepreneurship, and this tells us to mix. It's called mix, right?
Yep, MYX. Yep.
MYX, I love it. So tell us about how the idea came and why.
Yeah. So I've spent my career creating schools, and up until now, really for the elite. The schools I've built have been private schools. The tuitions are $60,000 a year.
Tell me about it. I have 2 kids.
So you're in it. You understand it. Okay.
And I know in New York City, and I know.
It's just the thing. And everything when this is the first real rethink of a holistic approach to higher education. And I'm going to tell you the truth of how the idea came in, because it was a personal journey for me. And often I find with entrepreneurs, there is a personal moment. I, unfortunately, 3 years ago, had my son and my husband both diagnosed with 2 of the most rarest cancers, completely different from one another.
Wow.
And I found myself dealing with the reality that my husband might not live, my child might not live, and I felt completely unequipped for life. Even this moment, I'd wake up and say, where's the mortgage? Is it a piece of paper? Do I find it in a drawer? All these things my husband had done, and I didn't feel at all capable of taking on this responsibility. And I realized that I've spent my entire career being an expert on how people learn and creating schools that got them the skills they needed to survive. And I focus a lot on reading, writing, math, rigor. And I all of a sudden realized that life throws a lot of punches and it's very unpredictable. And what are the real skills we need to give students to have purposeful and happy lives where they have the ability to climb those mountains that come from them? And it was this aha moment that I needed to step back and really look at the role of education through a bigger lens than I always had, which was test scores, right? This has been the lens of education for years. And we do things the way because we were told they're the way. For example, there is nothing magical about 4 years. College is 4 years. This is a very arbitrary human construct. Why is it 4? Why isn't it 3? Why isn't it 2? Why isn't it 6? Which is actually the time it takes most students to graduate. And then I started even thinking, looking at it from a whole new lens, going way back. And I say this to us ladies, because this is a good analogy. If someone told you, I have a hair product for you that can make your hair long, short, curly, frizzy, in a bun, all the same product, the same cost, with 2 squirts, the same exact amount, you would say that is the most absurd, ridiculous thing. There's no one product that can do it all. But yet, when we talk about higher education, we say we have college. It's 4 years. It costs the same amount of money, no matter what you're going to be. An astrophysicist, an actor, a lawyer, whatever you want. You need the same product, that costs the same amount of money, that costs the same amount of time, no, regardless of your earning potential. So student who wants to be a lawyer, you're going to pay this much. And student who wants to be a teacher, you're going to pay the same, even though you have 1/18 the earning potential they do. So it was this opportunity, and sometimes life has to hit you in the face and you have to have these moments of clarity that really empowered me to say, we got to look at it holistically and step back and talk about what the purpose of education is. What is its purpose? And then I spent 3.5 years studying the ROI, the return on investment of higher education. And I walked away pretty astounded by what I found.
Wow. And what did you find?
So from our research, 14%, and this is in the United States, and I just want to be clear on that, 14% of students who enter our higher education system are successfully served. I bet you can guess who that 14% typically are and what schools they went to. But to be successfully served is the following requirements. One, they graduate. 49% of students who enter will never graduate.
Wow.
I mean, from our own grading metrics, that's an F. We have failed our own system of grading, right? That is an F. 51% is an F. And remember, of those that don't graduate, 70% of that do walk away with something, college debt. Right?
Absolutely.
Then if those who do graduate, half of them will make less than $26,000 6 years out. Very much questioning if the degree costs more than its market value.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? And why are there not self-correcting things like in a normal market of economy you would see? Education's very different. And then the third is 72% of students don't use their degree of study. So they graduate, they get a job, but it has nothing to do with the thing they studied. And that to me is a really interesting question. And it really asks the question if the institution is set up correctly for success, because I know as someone who's created elementary schools and K-12 schools, there is nothing about a K-12 education that tells you what a public policy degree is and what you can do with it and why it would be good for you. That is not part of what we do, but yet we throw them into these ecosystems and have them make these choices without any exploration or really understanding of what they can expect at the other end. So we believe that the future needs to have, there's a few things wrong with our current education system, a lot. We could talk about the fact that tuition continues to rise, wages remain stagnant, right? That is a huge issue. And we've seen that with our millennial generation and how shackled they are with college debt with very few job prospects. We do not want to repeat that Gen Z. But the core thing that I think is really at the root of the cause, and by the way, this is not a controversial thing to say, Stanford has said it, Yale has said it, everyone has said it, is the model that we've been working on, and education is hundreds of years old, is an upfront loading model. And that has worked for a while, just like the horse and buggy worked for a while, right? It is the concept that you do school and then life. You take out $200,000 of loans, you're going to get this certificate that'll set you up for life. That worked for a while. You did actually spend most of your career on one path. What we know about the future of work is the class of 2020 will have 11 distinct jobs by the time they're 50. 11 distinct jobs. To sell them a narrative that they can go to college and get all the education they require for this huge lump of sum, and they're going to be set for life, we know no longer works.
Absolutely. And why do you think that the system is so outdated and nobody does anything about it? I mean, the schools and institutions continue the same way, the education continues, and it's not just in the United States. I could tell you it's the same thing in a lot of the countries that happen to be.
It's a complicated answer, but I think to make it simple, they're really too big to pivot and to fail. They are such large institutions with hundreds of years of this is the way it's done. They have actually created a physical map that they're of assets, the physics building, the psychology building, the way their infrastructure is, it is very hard to change. You also have not hired learners, because what we know about the 21st century and the skill sets that are imperative to allow students to jump from 11 different vocations is that cross foundational skills of thinking, critical thinking, design, all that. You have a university, though, full of tenured physics professors, tenured historians. There is no cross, and it's very hard to make change. I will say this, though, universities are working really hard at it. They have a lot of things against them. Being the mix has a lot of advantages. We don't have what has been done. I don't have alumni that give millions of dollars that say, I want to make sure the physics class, this continues. I have none of those constraints, which is a really advantageous place to be. But it is difficult. They get government funding. Tenure is like the biggest union you've ever seen. It is very hard for these universities to make change. I will say this, COVID has been a beautiful thing in the long run. It has really forced these universities to think outside the box and leverage technology to bring down costs. Now, one thing we know for sure as experts in how people learn is the lecture model is not how anyone learns.
That's true. And what do you do in MIX that is different? And I mean, what is the advantage to go through that path?
So what we learned in our deep study of the ROI of college is that the experience matters. No one really talks about that. 8% of your time in college is spent in the classroom. So that means 8% of those tens of thousands of dollars is spent for your tens of thousands of dollars is spent for 8% intentional curriculum. The experience is pretty unintentional. There's Greek life, there's clubs, there's things like that. But the things that actually matter in regards to long-term success is networks and access. It is the people. The people actually really matter. The amount of content you will retain by the time you're 40 is in the single digits from college, if at any at all. And we put so much time and energy into these classes and content and online ed and where it's going. And so what the mix has said is something that no one's saying out loud. We should focus on the 92%. The 8% can be done anywhere and from any place, because a lecture is really a passive experience of content download. And technology lets us do it better. One, you're allowed, you don't need to go to your community college. You can get the master class from the person building it. You have access to that person. So when I talk about people creating content, I'm not just talking about Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, and all these incredible research institutions that are making online content that you can get at a fraction of the price, which is so empowering for the average student who never would have that opportunity. But I'm also talking about Google and Facebook, who are creating incredible content that if you want to learn about social media, well, they invented it. They also are creating incredible content. So we are in an education beautiful revolution where we're seeing content become not only accessible, but the quality of content really on the rise, and AR and VR and all those things. The mix leverages that. And what we think the future is the 4-year degree is very much in question by everyone. 89% of employers do not believe their college graduates come out work ready. It is estimated they have to put in 18 months of professional development to get any value out of that employer. This is a real issue. The universities and employers are not speaking. So if we could create personalized playlists, so every student in the mix creates like what you would think is an iTunes playlist, but it is their learning. And it is customized to what their goals are, their immediate goals. Okay? What are you looking for from your education? And 92% say, get a job. Higher education is not set up to get you a job. It's set up to give you this liberal arts degree. So the 4-year degree is absolutely in question. Our hypothesis is, what is more valuable to the future employer? A CV that says, I have a bachelor's in science and marketing from X university, or a CV that says, I have taken the marketing specialization from Wharton. I have the Facebook certification in social media. I have the Canva, the #1 design tool, advanced degree or whatever their certification process is, this combination, and let me show you my work. Let me show you my work. So every student in the mix is able to leverage the online of the best universities around the world, but on-site what we do is best practice. Every student is empowered through apprenticeships, internships, and on-the-ground work to actually master their curriculum by putting it into practice. Because how do we learn? By doing. And employers have shown that. In addition, we have really conquered a lot of the other things. One, we teach everything that higher education, K-12 education just doesn't teach, but yet is essential to life success. Basic contract law. College graduates, their first time getting their own apartment, 90% of them will ask their parents to sign the lease agreement and read it because they're intimidated by the language. Let's empower them. Let's teach them these skills, how to change a tire, financial literacy, how to cook, all those things we teach on site. In addition,
I love it.
we believe purpose is very important. There is no individual purpose development, and understanding your strengths and weaknesses can really help you choose the best educational track. Every student in the mix has a one-to-one life coach. We also only have campuses of 150. That allows us a huge advantage. One, every college will say students learn by doing. It is very hard for them to get their students out in the field because there's 6,000 of them. And there's not many communities that can take in 6,000 interns. We have a huge advantage by our size. We're very passionate about mental health. 79% of students pre-COVID, I wonder what it is post-COVID now, have a mental health break on campus. It is now tied as the number one reason, it always was financial, why students had to drop out, with why students are dropping out. We have a huge issue. Now, universities are very quick to point to the parents. It's their parenting, they're coddling them. I don't really care what the issue is. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to solve it. And we cannot deny that this generation has a completely different sense of self and well-being. They have a personal self, they're a person who shows up in the room. They also have a digital self, that
That's
person
true.
with Instagram. That cognitive dissonance is very real and causes a lot of anxiety of like, here who I am in the world to my friends and here but I'm not that in person.
But that's brilliant what you're saying. I mean, it's really brilliant. And just to wrap up, I would like to know why you say that the future of education is personal. Because I love that. I love that.
It is. It's true. The future of education is personal. Why I'm so passionate about that, why I'm sticking by that, is we know the one size fits all, the hair product I described to you doesn't work.
It doesn't, definitely not.
There's no such thing as a freshman. I can't wait to meet this freshman that we sell to. There's Ethans, there's Nikos, there's Samanthas. They're all very different with their own needs and passions. So we are in a time where we can bring personalization due to technology in a totally new light, allowing teachers to rethink their purpose and not be a disseminator of information, because that can be recorded and pushed out with actually editing, visuals, links in a beautiful way. But think about them as true mentors and teaching people how to think. So the mix is a personal journey. And by incubating them in communities where everyone knows their name, because I do think a sense of belonging is very important. And we think about the role of schools. It's not just educating them and getting to them their next checkpoint, but giving them friends, a sense of self and purpose. These things matter. And it scares me that as universities will close, because they will, we are at a turning point. We have more supply than demand. We have people opting out of the traditional path, that everything will go online. We can't allow that. That is not the answer. I know it's the cheaper answer. I know it's something that people are excited about. And online plays a role. We should lever technology, but let's not forget what education is really about. It's about humanity and the person.
Indeed. Well, Abby, I could speak with you for hours, and I'm even thinking I need to interview her again because there is so many information that we would like to know. But we're definitely going to follow what are you doing, where the school is going, because I think it is important for the new generations to understand there is other pathways that could bring them exactly to the point that they want to be, faster and more efficiently. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And we will definitely share the links and every information that we get, because I think it's really, really interesting. And maybe it's going to be a part 2.
I appreciate it. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Abby.
Okay.